Richardson Stees.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. It is, I guess, the agenda that was originally printed up was our original date and time, but what's actually Monday, December 16th. This is the December meeting of the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee. It is 1:01 p.m. We're calling to order. And first thing I need to do is a roll call. So it's not Mr. Wilbur, but Miss Sunday. He's sitting in for Mr. Wilbur this month. So she's here. Mr. Reader's not with us yet. Mr. Martin?
Here.
Mr. Lindebu?
Present.
Mr. Bethel?
Present.
Ms. Witt? Here. Ms. Epstein? Here. Mr. Morris?
Here.
And Ms. Mormillo is here, so we do have quorum. And Craig, would you mind doing our public involvement announcement?
It's been a while.
And
Try.
we get two more show? This is only good.
Two more to show
Wow. Record show Mr. Weaver and Ms. Heil has joined us.
All AMATS meetings are public meetings. The public is invited to comment. We have the business item. We'll have the presentation by staff or consultants first. Then the committee will have an opportunity to discuss it. And then at that point, the public will be invited to discuss or have questions, et cetera, on the business items.
Okay, thank you very much. So first up is the approval of the agenda.
This? Yeah.
Mr. Weaver and Ms. Heil.
Second.
Second by Mr. Morris. Is there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, we are so moved. The agenda is approved. We have no minutes at this time.
We don't right now. We are working on them. I have, I think, 5 sets that we received from the contractor. Just have to have an opportunity to get to. And then we have just a few sets, sending her that were in progress by Jim previously. So I think 2 sets that I need to send.
So we should have quite a few for January.
Yes, you will.
Okay.
And Mr. Hanson just showed them.
Wow. Everybody's here. Let's have your show and surprise. I know. All right, so up first as our business items is the approval when we do the 2014-2015 Unified Planning Work Program, the UPW.
So big thick draft there. It says 12/5 on the front, or 5 December 2013, I guess. I had a couple work sessions on these. Just before I get into the meat of it, I do have one page here. This is changes from printed to right. So there's a little bit of changes on page 11 about air quality information. That is not in here, but it will be, depending on what you guys do there, I guess. And then a little change in the language in task 133. I've also included a listing of major discrete projects here, landscape format. It talks about all of the tasks that are in the UPWP that have a very specific date, and they'll say expecting to be completed second quarter of 2015 or anything like that. So those dates are in there. The rest of the projects or the rest of the tasks that are in the UPWP are considered to be ongoing. They don't have a discrete time frame for when something is supposed to occur. The last time you had one of these tables, it had a bunch of asterisks saying these grew out corrective actions. And we will have all of those corrective actions either all taken care of by now, or will be taken care of when we complete the CMP. So I think we're already set actually with all of them. The CMP part that we're doing is just above that. So we don't have any more corrective actions to take care of, which is a wonderful thing. And then you have your draft budget. So basically, what we did after the results of the last 2 work sessions, we updated some of the language that was in the text of the document itself. And then the main thing that I did was, you remember previously with the budget, I had slop, yeah. There was some slop. The slop in the,
I don't know who said that.
the budget here, where I would look at the amount of staff time, charge that by their chargeable rate, multiply that by their chargeable rate to come up with the dollar figure, and then I would do a little rounding to take into account the fact that sometimes we say we're going to take a week to do something, and it may take 4 days, it may take 2 weeks, things of that nature. So what I did here was I took the exact dollar figure based on the numbers, chargeable rate, etc., and plugged it in exactly. And then the leftover dollars went into the East Bernard Road corridor study. And that's the sum result of the changes based on what was requested at the TACD. Let's see, make sure I have anything else to.
Any comments?
The only comment I got was from Todd Logan, who is on our Bike and Ped Committee, but he's been active in AMATS for a while, and he basically just said, wanted to make sure that there was enough staff time to staff the Bike and Ped Committee as well as complete the area wet trails update. So, and that, those staffing applications were already included in the budget already. That's the extent of the public comment on that. So I'm happy to attempt to answer questions on this, along with the rest of the experts in the room who work on it. Staff did an amazing amount of work on it.
I just have a question, one that I hadn't brought up at a previous work session. It's on task 480, page 40. I just wanted to make sure that these years are indeed true, that we have not actually validated the model since 2002. Base year, and it's been updated but not validated. Is that the status of it?
I believe that's the correct terminology. Not an expert at it, but I believe, double checked with the powers that be, and that's what they said.
So I thought there was a lot more that was done for the last NTP update. That, I just asked staff prior to the policy committee, that is the main paragraph here on page 40, be confirmed is correct. Because, because there was the adoption of the model that was done for what at the time was the highway-to-highway connection, and I believe that one had been. If anything, I would just confirm, please.
I'll find out. I'll make sure it all.
Yeah, if there's any corrections, then feel free to just, but I think there might be just a couple of sentences missing for the updated. Actually, Gary just showed up.
The question basically was, in task 480, we're talking about the model, whether or not, when we say there's an updated model, it's here from 2007, but it says it was last validated in the year 2002, and I just don't, I'm not certain whether it was validated with the MTP effort the last time you guys did it, or just updated stuff, but it wasn't necessarily validated, and I'm honestly not, I'm not clear on the difference in terms. Do you have any idea, Gary?
I'm not sure. I'm Gary Katzian with Kittleson and Associates. I know they checked the model as part of the highway-to-highway project and verified it against more recent traffic counts, but I don't believe they went back and did the official validation, because I think a lot of it had to do with the household surveys, and there hasn't been a household survey since.
Right.
That's what this says.
Yeah.
So I'll just confirm it. Teresa's out until Friday. She's out of town, so but I can then contact her and find out for sure.
That's from
Yes, I'll see you.
Are there any other questions or
I think
comments?
so. To kind of more leniency to work with Craig on the language here that I gave him. It's some editorial changes. And extra hands and stuff like that. On page, I did, I'll do that
I know at the work sessions, there's a lot of discussion about, this is a budget, but in reality, sometimes it can sort of mess with your budget, especially when it came to the 2 additional cleaning staff members, and just sort of the concern about leaving cleaning funds on the table at the end of the year. I think my proposal would be if Craig or staff can provide a monthly financial report to the TAC. It might be really informative to this body going forward to better track what our actual expenses and budgeted expenditures are, so that if we need to make adjustments to either reprogram the money or do something similar to that, in order to spend all of the PL funds, that we could do that earlier in the process. I know Transit has some projects that we could absorb some of the planning funds if necessary. And we may have some projects. So it just seems like a good thing to keep this body aware of what's going on with their actual budget.
I think that's a good idea.
Do we, I guess, question for my own edification, I mean, do we not do that regularly?
We do quarterly reports, report to DOT, and we show the amount spent in the quarter, and then we do a year-to-date, and we track percentages there. It goes hand in hand with the exercise that I do with Renee Stewart, where we look at how much we spend in a task, and if we're over 110% in an element, we move some funds around because FHWA will reimburse. In other words, they will pay for the work program up to 110% of a task. They figure there's got to be some room for error there. And so we usually do this exercise in this kind of time frame where we bring an amendment to the TAC and the policy committee saying we need to move money out of this element and move it into this so that we can cover. Obviously, not a problem this year since we were understaffed and therefore didn't utilize all the funds. So, but it's an exercise we do regularly. I don't know that, I certainly wouldn't want to do an amendment monthly, because that just doesn't make sense, but quarterly, but keeping the TAC informed is not a problem at all. I mean, it's an exercise that we do. It's easier to do by the quarter, just because of the work output required. But it's certainly possible, if that's what the TAC wants.
Is it possible just to do a kind of financial reporting monthly, to pull that? Was that, as an interim to the quarterly? We have the same issue on the state side, that in managing the budget, it's difficult when you have vacancies and things like that, because you have the potential of leaving a lot of funding on the table that may or may not be available to move to other items. But in this case, if there is kind of a backlog of things that may be funded or may be delayed eligible, it might not be a bad idea to catch that early.
And I just wanted to add, I guess my reasoning for monthly rather than quarterly, because I do know that you're tracking that and doing your best, is just, if we're able to look at it more often, we're able to adapt and reprogram perhaps quicker. And I think we all know how projects work. If you wait till the 11th hour of the third quarter, it's almost impossible then for us to absorb that money in another project. Whereas, realistically, you would pretty much have to start moving at the end of the first quarter in order to really make any difference in spending money by the end of the year.
I guess if we did monthly reports, but then made it more of, I guess if we're going to have any modifications, if we're going to do those on a quarterly basis. So, keep ourselves informed on a monthly basis, but then. We haven't started. Would you like to propose a motion?
I'll just say I'd like to make a motion that the TAC receive monthly financial reports tracking the budgeted versus the actual expenditure of bill funds, just to aid in the decision-making process. Did I capture that?
I think so.
Okay.
Seconded by Ms. Sunday, on behalf of Mrs. Lovelace. Seconded by Ms. Witt. Are there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, we are so moved. All right, so back to, I guess, what's on the table. Are there any more questions or comments from the committee at this time on the UPWP that is before us? All right. Then at this time, the UPWP is open for questions or comments from the public. If anybody has anything, please make sure to state your name for the record. Mitch Cassian?
Harry Katzian. Just one question on there's a lot of individual pieces in the work order. Is there anything that shows how all of it fits together in terms of in the bigger scheme of things? Because some of these projects are sort of predecessors to other projects or input to other projects. Is there any schedule that sort of shows the whole thing in the bigger picture?
I guess I'm not. Bigger picture of what exactly?
I think like working towards, I mean, really the MTP, at least I'm speaking for you, I guess, but, you know, there's certain steps and components and updates we have to do moving towards the update to the MTP, and I guess in the timeline of how those all fit together so that we're keeping on track.
Or the
What? More than you
Well, I guess the MTP is what guides everything. And so a number of these tasks that are in there and a number of tasks that have been, or a number of projects that were nominated for the new tip all came out of the MTP. And so that's what guides us for the long run. And then this is just a 2-year snapshot of what our staff is actually doing in the next 2 years to work towards those goals. So other than the MTP and the UPWP and the TIP, those are our main work products that show what we're doing in the short term and the long term. There isn't really another document besides those that draws those all together.
So I guess, following on the comment, is there a way to track, we know we've got the budgetary monthly meetings, reports. How are we going to know if these are all getting accomplished on time they need to get accomplished? I guess that's the other question, is how do we make sure that, what's one of the big ones that are happening right now? Is there an update or how these surveys or something?
We're doing the travel survey.
Travel survey. So the travel survey fits into such and such. I mean, what do we know? I mean, you don't tell us about it.
Well, that's the same kind of stuff that, all of these tasks show in the quarterly report. And the last time that you met, that you asked to have can we get the quarterly report, we actually haven't had a meeting after we finished the quarterly report. So this would have been the meeting, but obviously there's a lot of other stuff going on. But the quarterly report it shows percent completed to task, it shows the dollar figure. So it'll say we have expended 60% of the dollars that we expected to spend so far in this task. We are 85% of the way towards completing this task. We're on track, so on and so forth. It's all in the quarterly report. So that is a mechanism to inform you of that.
There's been times when we've missed, it's taking a little longer on a contract, which has caused a slip.
Yep.
Which then, causes this way down here to slip. But we don't know about this one way down here because we didn't realize that this piece tied to that piece, so we're down here. Well, we're really late now because the piece way up here got late. Does that make sense? Is there any way to kind of put all these things in a chronological order so we can know when a critical time happens in the early days? And we'll know what would happen down here, and there's any way we can make adjustments as we're moving.
I'm sure there's a way. I guess I would hope we would look at it as competent staff doing a job, and I'm trying to coordinate that and making sure that they're on task, and the quarterly report is what we utilize to see where we're tracking.
So how are we on that big tip schedule we had about a year ago?
We are about a month and a half behind, but we have about 4 months wiggle room at the other end, so we're still doing fine.
Can I, well, You can go.
So we have a similar thing for the MTP. Do we have a kind of a critical path? I mean, there's lots of little components that have to happen before we can develop the model for one. And then I think there's a land use allocation maybe that needs to happen. I guess I would like to see a critical path or a schedule or some way that shows how we get from here to 116 with an MTP done. And just sort of for our edification, that you may have already done that.
Well, my plan is to meet with, well, the main person is Teresa, a bunch of the stuff that goes into that, and we'll be managing the MTP and the household travel survey updates. So, to get with her and come up with that sort of critical path of all the pieces that need to go into that, based on several different contracts and several different work efforts that are in the UPWP, and make sure that we're tracking that. We are tracking that just fine based on what was in the last UPWP and this UPWP just fine. But we will create a document that does, I mean, we have a schedule, but that doesn't necessarily show update to the travel, to the model, and when that coincides with the information that comes out of the travel survey, et cetera, but we will get that done here when she comes back. and
Yeah,
present
that's
that.
kind of, I would say, I came in on the tail end of the last approval of the MTP. So this will be my first time going through this whole process. And I guess for my own personal use, when I'm picturing, like you said, critical path, when you're looking at, okay, these are the tasks that have to be completed by certain dates so that we're getting to that MTP update, and how they kind of have to flow together so that there's often slip room, like you said, you may have 4 months buffer time of which from one to the next. But I guess I personally don't know all the steps that go into it. I mean, especially since we're doing the update to the travel demand model and even the travel surveys and how those all fit together. I mean, and I guess I can chronologically rearrange this list of tasks, because right now they're put together in the task number rather than the chronological. I could rearrange them to kind of go, okay, it looks like this has to be, because sometimes task B isn't dependent upon task A, it may be dependent on task X, and there's that critical path that I think it'd be beneficial to see something like that just so we know. I personally, I don't know. I don't know what the critical path is. I'm just here running the meeting.
If I could say that the last MTP was achieved, but I would say that it was anything but a smooth and easy road. And already just looking to underscore what Steve was talking about, Stephanie mentioned here, is if you just look at the quarters, you have a complete household travel survey in third quarter of 2015, update the travel model in fourth quarter of 2015, and then you have adopting an updated MTP in the first quarter of 2016. There's just no way. And so that's where I think an instrument or some sort of critical path document that shows what has to happen by when would be very, very useful. And I'm not sure why the travel demand, the travel survey is going to take so long. It's third quarter 2015. So anyhow, I think along with the monthly financials, just having the TIF, the development of the TIF and the MTP are the two critical things, and so everything is in preparation for the center. So I think with a report for something that shows.
And I agree with you on everything. I think the schedule would help immensely. And I was going to ask Craig, you have access to something like Microsoft Project?
I haven't used it, but I imagine we could get it.
Well, I tell you what, I have a consultant in the room, and since they're the only ones in the room, I'm willing to give you some assistance. And I see you're hiding behind Nicole, so Nicole, you're the...
We will do that.
So PTS, we can use some help, and they've got access to scheduling programs. We could give you some help. Is that okay? So put that on your list.
No, well, should we make another motion?
Yes.
I would say, did you?
Madam Chair, thank you. The congestion management process, RFP, is in purchasing, and it's been there a while. And I'm actually getting kind of nervous about the fact that process cannot let us hire somebody as quickly as we want to. We need to have that input by November. We hope to have a consultant on board by April for the MTP update. I'm really getting kind of worried about whether we're actually going to be able to do that or not, just because of how long it takes with downtown. They are so short-staffed. They've pulled almost everybody off of helping with. They've got contracts backlogged with planning, with traffic, and they don't even return my calls or emails anymore. And we need to have the household travel survey done and the model done, hopefully by November, as I understood it, so that all these pieces will be ready to go when we do the status, and the status of the system report is part of the congestion management process. So all of that, all those pieces, we were anticipating to have done by a year from now. And I am very concerned about our ability to get that done because of the process. And I don't know how, I've asked for help, I don't know how to speed it up, frankly. We go to other people and nobody's able to help us.
Can the policy committee advocate on our behalf?
If they had like a Microsoft project to see where it all flows in, I think they would.
Well, I've had several discussions with the purchasing officer. They've had some issues. He was out having his hip replaced, they're short-staffed. But he has promised me that they will be getting everything up to speed. It would, I think with the departments, we need to get a list of all our projects. I've had stuff down there that's over 2 months old. I agree with you. And we need to see about sending an email to the purchasing officer with a list of all the municipal projects that are just like this one and several that we've got.
I think similar to though when we have our
Just so-
when we have our pre-agenda meetings and we have the discussion of like the must-go items that need to be on the agenda. Perhaps if we have regular meetings with city manager and elsewhere that we've had and we're on the first thing.
We have another
We've
one
had
tomorrow, Wednesday morning.
Yeah, have our must-go items and I think it helps, like you said, the policy committee. I mean, if we had something that showed the timeline, that if this slips any further, we're already behind for MPP update. I mean, really, that this must go, that perhaps would be supporting, but I think there's other things.
We have the meeting Wednesday morning. I'm supposed to be there, so. Bring those up.
I'd say either give me a list of what it is, give me a full, rundown of what it is, or tell Jerry, because Jerry will also be in the meeting, so we can kind of touch base and say, we need these now. So, do we motion? Can we do a motion for critical task?
I move that we, that a Microsoft project outline all the elements for the MTP and TIP is developed so that we can see if the critical path forward of our project and have that updated monthly.
Second. Moved by Ms. Howe, seconded by Ms. Wade. Just writing what the motion was. Are there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, we are so moved. All right, once more, back to business item. Yes, that we had still open to the public. I know, Gary, you had a question. Are there any other questions or comments from the public on the EWP at this time? Go once, go twice. All right, then it is back to the committee.
So I think that with the 2 monthly reports we've just created, I think it's going to help with, I'm hoping it'll help with making sure we get all the applications for identifying the plans and the years completed. I think that's our biggest goal. So I'm more comfortable now on that. So thank you.
All right. We have a motion for the EWP.
I'll
Move to approve.
Recommend for approval.
Recommend for approval.
Second.
All right, then moved by Ms. Sunday, seconded by Ms. Howe. Are there any opposed to the motion? Hearing none, they are so moved. We'll recommend approval to the policy committee of the UPWP. Next up is our informational reports. The first item 6A, is the ITS update, City Transportation Operations Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a great topic for you today. I think you'll be very interested and it's very timely. And before I introduce our speakers, I just wanted to let you know that the ITS architecture is up for renewal. It was through to 2004, and it's another RFP that is sitting in purchasing. So we're going to hope and pray that it will get going soon. But the ITS architecture includes a project for a local traffic operations center. The statewide traffic operations, or the statewide ITS architecture also includes a project for a statewide traffic operations center. So hopefully there are some opportunities from collaboration here. Our speakers today are talking to you about the statewide Transportation Operations Center. They changed it from traffic to Transportation Operations Center, looking at the whole picture. Dan Braden is Special Programs Manager with the DOT and PF Commissioner's Office. He currently manages the statewide Transportation Operations Center Concept of Operations Exploration Project. Dan Monteleone is Statewide Safety, Security, and Emergency Management Coordinator with DOT and PF Office of the Commissioner. And you'll see how these two functions interrelate very well. So, Dan?
Hi, Dan Breeden, Transportation. I really asked for some time today to talk about the statewide transportation operations center concept. And we've done is we've hired Kittleson to do a needs assessment for us. And we're a little behind schedule on what we hope to do. I hope to have an actual report in my hand, but we had some complications scheduling some people we thought were very important to interview in their schedules. So I hope to have that next week, and from then we'll review it, we'll get back to them, and we'll have a stakeholder meeting the week of the 27th, January 27th, or February 3rd. We haven't nailed down yet. And after which we'll decide at that point whether we want to go on and look at the concept and then do a feasibility report. So we're still pretty early in the program, but we look to move fairly quickly in the next few months. And I guess we hope to do it fairly quickly if we decide that we should go forward with one. If there's enough to do it.
Would you be comfortable talking about some of the needs you've heard, or some of the feedback you've gotten, or the needs for the?
Not currently.
Okay.
It's pretty wide, it's pretty varied. People have different interests. You have to just look at the overall picture of what we do, and how we do it, and how we're trying to integrate the cooperation of the agencies, both state sister agencies and municipalities. And not everybody wants to play the same. And people who maybe they want to be a part of it, don't have the resources. They're interested in it, but they can't because they're held back by some constraining reason, whether it be of their own design or their superiors or just general inability to participate. So I don't think it'd be fair to talk about it right now. I'm open for questions, so is that, I hope to know more when we get it together. The last interview, I think, is scheduled for the 18th, and it should come together pretty quickly after that. And do you want anything?
Our plan is to get it to you for sure next year.
So it's gone real well so far. Everybody's just been real good.
Ms. Epstein?
I apologize, I'm not entirely clear what the project is about, and you mentioned a stakeholder meeting, so I'm curious, if there's a role for the public to be engaged in that.
We haven't yet. I guess if we were looking at a needs assessment from the agencies, who had what to offer, who had what needs and what needs we had to provide the service to the public. It's brought up by a couple of different reasons, but the first one was when the commissioner and the governor held a press conference, and they said they were gonna look into this before we, initially it was like a highway safety corridor, and when they were looking at that, there's been also some issues with the valley legislators and traffic incident management, which is the next subject in line. But the overall, we're just looking what we could do for one another to improve our public service. And so I don't think we're at the stage right where it is yet where we needed a public involvement because we don't know what we need yet or want.
But wouldn't the public have some sense of what it needs in terms of public service? As opposed to?
Well, we've had, there's been interviews with interested parties that they've been, I don't know that anyone from the public has been interviewed, the public at large.
Not public at large.
Right. But I guess from the overall standpoint, we've had public meetings on these issues with them, and we've heard from them, and some of us have brought that to the table, that we know what they want. But we haven't had any at-large public comment at all.
Or even interviewees, key people. It seems like that might make some sense to do that if the intent is to enhance the service to the public, to tap into some of the knowledge of the people about what that service should consist of.
And there's been public meetings on Urban 2020, we've talked to others, but not directly with our contractor in the room. But those messages have been taken back to the contractor. And I know Jennifer's been with me, and we've talked to them on 2 different occasions just recently. And their concerns, and the folks out in the valley, their concerns, they log on back to the contractor. So there have been public comments relayed, but no persons directly interviewed.
All right, well, I don't want to beat a dead horse,
Well,
but just
and I
one final comment,
your point is well
that,
taken,
okay, I just want to be sure, and, no disrespect intended, but, when you relay, you always have an intermediary.
Your point is taken.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or other questions or comments from the committee?
There's scope.
Yes, he does. He wants to talk about it.
Well, the thing is, traffic incident management is a related element of the Traffic Operations Center. And I'm sure you've heard, part of what you've heard from the community is, especially like the Glen Highway, traffic incident management is really important. So I know that you're working with the troopers on Train the Trainer. Federal Highway Administration has a goal of having all states have their key personnel, responders, go through Train the Trainer training. And could you talk about that?
Sure. Dan Mollion, DOT. A couple of months back, the legislators in the Matsu cornered my commissioner and said, what are you doing about keeping this highway open in emergencies? And essentially, what we were talking to them about then and have since then was developing a traffic incident management training. We have, since that meeting, brought federal highways contractors up here, and we've trained Anchorage Fire Department, several of the other emergency response personnel in the area, as well as troopers and other law enforcement personnel. We did 2 meetings, one here in Anchorage and one in Fairbanks. We did not see a lot of Anchorage Police Department at those meetings, and we don't know why. Essentially considering that they are probably a critical component in this area in keeping traffic incident management issues at the forefront. Essentially what this is about is when a major bottleneck occurs on the highway, we've seen a effect that occurs where it takes an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes to get the highway open. And because of a lot of the public's annoyance with that, we've been pushing this forward. So we've had those meetings, we're starting this initiative, we've got several folks now, somewhere to the tune of 40 in-state that are presently trained the trainer qualified to move forward with the program. Does that do it? Okay.
Any questions from the committee?
Well, the reason why that's important is that for ITS to work, you have to have not just technological integration, you also have to have institutional integration. And if John in Agency A is not talking to Bill in Agency B for whatever reason, maybe limited budget, limited staff resources or whatever, nothing's going to happen. So the fact that this is huge, you may not realize it, but to get these agencies together, the troopers and the fire department together, working on response, and part of this, as I understand it too, is for everybody to understand each other's needs. And if they're not talking together, they're not going to get that information. So this is really a giant step forward. And so so that is going to feed into the State Traffic Operations Center. They'll put all that together and see what next steps are. As I understand it.
Yeah, we're looking at, everything, traffic sensors, weather data, all that stuff to be relayed, more real-time information to the public and the drivers. What we've heard mostly is everybody wants to know if the road is closed or there's going to be late, just before they hit that last exit.
We have.
They get off the way, they go to a movie, go to dinner, whatever, on the way home. We've heard that from every group, if you could just let us know before we got on the highway. So we've heard that loud and clear.
Yeah, and it's funny, I travel quite a bit, and it's funny to me, most places I go elsewhere, if you watch the news, if you listen to radio, and everywhere, I was amazed in Honolulu, you get the traffic update every 15 minutes. I was like, man, there's a lot of traffic,
But it never changes.
I know, But even there, you go to Boston, New York, the different places I've traveled, really, they have so much. It's figuring out where people are getting their information, whether it is media, because yes, you can do something on the news or on the radio, but if somebody's not watching or listening to the radio, how are they getting Twitter updates? Are they looking at Facebook? Are they doing? There's so many different forms of mass communications, figuring out how best to get that information out. And I know that personally in traffic, we have our own Twitter page, we have our Anchorage website, we have our Anchorage Road website, and we follow APD, troopers, and everybody else to try to share all the up-to-date information, because we often don't know, and we get phone calls. Is the highway closed? We heard that it was closed at this exit, and we haven't been informed at all when people are calling our office. So I guess I personally relate very strongly to this. I know I was one of the stakeholders interviewed, but I think this is a very interesting topic, and it's going to continue to be on everybody's minds, I think, both public and institutional. So, was there a question over here?
We're just guessing.
No. Thanks for being honest.
Exchanging information. About trafficking.
All right. Is there any other, are there any other, questions or comments on the IT update and the statewide transportation operations center? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. All right, so our next item, 6B, is the Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Project Phase 1.
My name's Dean Kars. I'm with Professional and Technical Services. We're the project manager. We have a 5-minute, a 15-minute, or we could probably drag it out to 2 hours. What's your agenda? 5 or 15? 5. Well, that sounds good. That was a small tackle. We're just dancing.
Need to be lean in there, mister.
If you give me a choice.
But again, I'm the project manager. PTS is a term, project management contract with PM&E. Nicole Ream is the project administrator. She's with PTS as well. Our design consultant is Dowell. Engineers Steve Noble and Aaron Christie are here, and Gary Katzian is their sub-consultant helping out with traffic. This is just real quick, and I'll keep my comments even shorter, hopefully, than Steve and Aaron's. We're in the concept report stage. We've had some different meetings. Our most recent one was with the public last month, earlier this month, a few weeks ago. And as we move forward, we'll have the concept report, design study report, and then we'll hopefully be moving into design study phase. With that, I'll turn it over to Steve and Aaron.
So, you want us to
Ideally.
watch?
I can. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll just Jennifer, since she's already heard my presentation once.
But I have.
Oh, really?
I missed the email.
Oh, okay, I was thinking of Muldoon, Glenn Muldoon. Well, appreciate your time. I will keep this as brief as possible. We're going to do the 5-minute version, so next.
Just because nobody else lives in here.
You don't have 5 minute version, you need 15.
So just a little bit of background, because I'm not sure where everybody's coming from as far as their knowledge of this project. The Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Phase 1 is the first project that has arisen out of the Eagle River Central Business District circulation study that was completed a couple of years ago. And this project is a municipally funded project, state-funded project, I'm sorry, to implement the first highest priority recommendations that came out of that study. And we are in it's state-funded, municipally managed, administered right now. And so we're in the concept report phase of the project, as you can read there. I'm really skipping through here quickly. This is where we are in the project. Construction's way out here, and we're still up front, very much up front in the public arena. We're working with the public and having technical advisory committee meetings with a working group that we've established on the project. Our hope is that we're very close to coming up with the preferred alternative that we can advance into the design study phase. We've got one more meeting with each group scheduled over the next month or so. And what we're going to present today is where we've arrived after the first few meetings and the additional efforts that have gone on. Next. So we're going to jump past a lot of this.
That's the
I mean, well, I remember that, but I don't remember what the top priority of the concept.
Okay, so back up. Okay, so this is the Eagle River Central Business District, essentially the map that came out of that effort, which recommended various projects, and there were a few projects that were common to all the different kind of overall circulation recommendations for the Eagle River area. And those concepts are the ones that are shown in green here. And so those concepts became the higher priority improvements. And so Eagle River Traffic Mitigation Phase 1 was the first project to tackle connecting Business Boulevard over to Eagle River Road and the intersection of Old Glen Highway. So that's the objective. And the green line doesn't really mean much. What we're trying to do is, if there was a letter A there and a letter B there, we're trying to connect A to B, okay? And exactly how that looks is really the topic of our discussion. But go back there. So one thing I will say is much of what we've spent the last year working on has been trying to determine how we can build this project in light of the other improvements that are ongoing on the Glen Highway, some of the other high priority projects that were identified in the Eagle River Circulation Study, which was the new Farm Avenue potential interchange, connecting Farm Avenue here into this is Eagle River Loop Road here, I believe, and a kind of a hard right, dedicated right turn lane from the freeway onto Eagle River Road. So those four things kind of all work in concert in the study to improve circulation on Old Glen Highway and on Business Boulevard. And unfortunately, this one has some traffic issues that are where it intersects with the Glen Highway. There's a lot happening in a very short distance there next to the artillery interchange, and so we've had our interchange workshops with the DOT and the municipal stakeholders to evaluate what can we do along the Glen Highway
How does it interface with our project? And can we build our project without making things worse? And now I think that is a good segue into further down here. We'll skip some of this. Okay, go back to the last one there. So that's a good segue into how do we go about adding a fourth leg to an already congested and what is perceived by the public and actually is not a very good operating three-way intersection already here at Eagle River Road and Old Glen Highway Artillery Road in this area. And essentially it came down to you can't just put in a fourth leg at the intersection without solving some other problems. Now, we can't just blindly come in and put this fourth leg on and connect it over here to Eagle River Road because the other issues that are going on here are too severe to allow that to happen. And so we spent some time looking at what can we do to make it so that we're at least not making it worse. And we focused we looked at the traffic analysis and focused our efforts on trying to improve three primary movements. One is the left turns from Eagle River Road onto Old Glen Artillery, the left turns from Old Glen onto Eagle River Road, and the right turns that come in off the freeway onto Eagle River Road. And so the three things that we've come up with is to do a dedicated right turn lane. And this is similar as it is today, except for it would make it impossible. You put an actual median in between the lanes, so that once you are committed in this outer right turn lane, once you're committed at this point in this lane, you're going onto Eagle River Road, and you don't have a choice in the matter. And that will help remove this weave that goes on between the off ramp and the intersection here, which is largely the source of the problems. People get in this lane because they're looking at turning right, and then they really want to go through onto the Old Glen Highway. So this would remove about 600 or 700 cars from the intersection and dedicate them here, and it would allow the weave for the through traffic coming from the other side of the interchange to weave over and turn right, uninhibited by the right turning movements here. You'd have a lot fewer traffic. The only people that would come here are the through movements. They'd be in the left lane, and then they would carry on through.
Yeah, and Steve, just as part of that alternative right there, right now where there is an auxiliary lane there, so to speak, and then it does merge at a very, very bad location. And if this were to attract more higher speed traffic directly off of that exit ramp, I guess as part of project development, you'd have to really look at where that merge happens, because it happens before Firehouse Lane, and you have people stopping there, especially with all of that new subdivision development on the other side of Old Eagle River Road. And I imagine you heard that at your public meeting too. But,
You're talking about right here where it merges in?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Well, how that actually works, this is a concept, how it works. Right now, we've got it separated by quite a bit. There's some utility conflicts here. There's a variety of reasons, but the land ownership would have to be resolved. I will say that this right turn lane is also included as an enhancement in the draft RFP for the Glen Highway Capacity Improvements Project. So I guess it's not out of the question that might be part of the state's Glen Highway project, but it also is not necessarily going to be included. It's not a definite part of it either. So the other thing, the other movements is the dual lefts from here, and that creates the opportunity for dual throughs here, because you're going to have two receiving lanes, and then dual lefts here. You'll have to make sure you have obviously adequate receiving lanes there to receive them as well. We've still yet to figure out exactly how this looks between the intersection and the interchange itself, but you would carry 2 through lanes, and then you'd have to merge down to 1, because there's only one through lane on the bridge itself. So the long story short is, once you add those capacity improvements to the intersection, you've added sufficient capacity to the intersection that you can add the fourth leg without making it over capacity, with actually, I think, Gary, the volume to capacity ratio was about 0.8 or so. with all of these improvements plus the fourth leg brought in. So we're fairly confident with those capacity measures in place that we've built in enough capacity to put the fourth leg in, with the caveat that we would not propose adding the left turn into the fourth leg. That there's just not enough space between the intersection and the off-ramp to adequately queue vehicles and make that operate properly. So movements coming from this direction would not be able to turn onto the road, but otherwise all other movements would be allowed at the fourth leg. Next.
And Steve, just for clarification of that, the left turn prohibition would be sort of an interim until we could figure out what's going on with the rebuild of the interchange at some future date.
Yeah, so the cooperative effort between the state and the city led to an interchange planning study, and there were several alternatives identified for how, or concepts, I should say, for how the artillery interchange would look. And those things could proceed irrespective of this project. Yes?
So if you don't get over to the right far enough to get into that right turn only lane and get on Eagle River Road, or your close friends don't let you in, right? Do you have a right turn prohibition where artillery intersects Eagle River Road?
No, there's still the
You
ability
can
to
still make a right turn?
Yeah. It's all the people coming from the other side of the interchange that want to turn right still have to have that ability.
So hopefully we remove 95%, there might be 5%. There could be a little bit of a learning curve here, obviously. And there'll also be a certain number of people who accidentally turn right, and they should only make that mistake once or twice.
Oh, I don't know.
You give it up.
There you go. Yeah.
That'll be
It's gonna take a year.
Okay, next. Okay, so when we started looking at how to then connect that intersection over to Business Boulevard, here's some of the basic elements of the project that we were looking for. We're looking for a 100-foot width to, just basic 100-foot minimum width for probably a collector, or a minor collector, or minor arterial, or a collector or minor arterial type road. And essentially trying to cover the road, the sidewalks, trying multimodal facilities here. And we're also trying to look at how we can keep the cost down. We have a limited, I think there's about $8 million in state funding for this project. And so we're trying to develop as much as we can, keep the cost down, alternatives that will keep the cost down. So go ahead. So I think we have 3 alignments here that we were trying to look at. And so some of these purple properties are properties that we felt were perhaps lower cost, or maybe more willing sellers, at least, that we identified in developing our alternatives. And so we have targeted some of our concepts at taking advantage of those properties specifically. And some of those concepts ignore those properties, and some of them target them specifically. So this first alternative is Alternative A, which really does target some properties here that we think we can acquire, minimizes impacts to some residential condominiums that are right here, which we have to partially tear down instead of, because once you start into it, this is going to be a challenging property to only take part of, I guess is what we're trying to say. So, but there is a vacant lot here. There's some undeveloped properties here, and long story short, we put the curve in the road. The side streets would have to be teed into it in all the locations.
Do you actually leave the church there?
In this case, the church would probably stay. The church is looking at reconstructing its, building a bigger building. These guys were probably not going to be a willing seller. The church is probably not going to be a willing seller, and they're the owner of this property as well over here. But they are looking at a bigger site. They are looking at building a bigger church kind of over in this part of their property. This is what they're telling us at the public meetings. But nevertheless, they're not thrilled about the going through their property in any case. So alignment B kind of deprioritizes this leg a little bit more and makes it continues to have Business Boulevard be the primary, and then you'd have to turn right onto this connection. Keeps the cost down a little bit more. Maybe this is a first step. Maybe this is maybe it's the permanent method. But in any case, we would tee in right there. You'd probably end up with a signal at that location, depending on the volumes. At least we plan for it. And both of these concepts avoid the condominiums. Roughly 4 acres of property under this concept. Next. Alignment C is much more of a, if the last one was more of a collector, this one's more of a minor arterial type connection here, if you will. Business Boulevard would be the primary Business Boulevard connection we teed in. Under this scenario, you're really not trying to target the available lands more than you are just trying to build what will be a more efficient corridor for Business Boulevard that would tie into the road. Under this concept, you have a little bit more right-of-way acquisition, but you've got a road that's got less curvature to it, and probably has improved side distance and greater ability to tie in those side streets with better side distance. So those are the 3 alignments. That's it right there. I think we're pretty close to the end here. So
Those are just some of the challenges that come with some.
long and short of it, we've got the University of Alaska Park. They're the ones who own the property on the inside of the right turn curve off of the interchange ramp. The utilities on that same side. We'd have to resolve those things. Those are probably more minor in relation to the right-of-way acquisition for the alignment. But we do have the opportunity to improve internal access and circulation. Why don't you go back to show what that means? So one of the potential benefits of this corridor from the interchange perspective is right now the access to these properties is very poor. A lot of narrow one-way streets, right-of-way that's not really well defined. And the impacts in this area are pretty significant if at the future interchange reconstruction under any of the concepts that were developed. Under this scenario, there would be another major road that they would be able to tee off of and provide better access to this area than coming off of Artillery Road. So that's one of the longer-term benefits of this 4th leg of that intersection. Better pedestrian facilities. I think that's Glen Highway capacity improvements. That was from our public meeting. We probably don't need to talk about that today.
Do you have relative cost differences between those 3 alternatives?
That's what's going to be coming out. Right now, these are just the concept, but that will be the step we will work on during the design study. And as Steve had mentioned, we've got $8.5 million in state grants. With the amount of improvements that are shown, and with that ramp construction, we don't anticipate being able to do all that work with the $8.5 million. But this is phase 1 of the Eagle River traffic mitigation. We'll be looking at those costs.
So, any questions? All right, thank you for your time.
If there was any other committee comments, we could have the order. Or we adjourn.
Last week I was in PA and going through the SIP schedules and dealing with updating them on Fairbanks. And I had an opportunity to try to encourage or reiterate the high priority we would like to see the acreage limited maintenance plan approved. And what they did tell me was that it's now at headquarters for approval, which is the step right before it gets released for so hopefully we'll see that within the next quarter. Budget register for the limited maintenance plan for carbon monoxide. Not anything yet, but I did poke them hard, saying it's something they really wanted.
Great.
I think we have an announcement, Bart, as you all know, that Bart was now our planning manager for aviation, and we plan on, and since, there's no cloning, we'd like to do. So, but Bart, we do have an announcement.
Yeah, we have a replacement hired. He's coming from Florida, so he'll be here January 7th, so the next year. Should be good. He has experience working with MPOs and local governments. He currently works for a transit authority in Florida. When we called him for the job, he was driving to the beach and it was 80 degrees. And
What was his comment?
but he said, just so you know, I do think it's ridiculous. It's 80 degrees in December. I said, good. How do you feel about 8?
And has everybody met Aaron? I don't know, because well, Bart, introduce.
Aaron is the new Anchorage area planner. So DOT split. They have an AMATS planner, which is what I did, and then Anchorage one, which is what Mark Parmley did. And he handles most of our TORAs, our agreements with the city. So Aaron has taken that responsibility now, and he's been there a few months now, doing well.
Well, he's been there for longer than that. He's been doing that job for.
He's been at DOT for 4 or 5 years. 5 years.
Okay. So now I just recently had him in this new role. Now I know.
Yeah, now you guys will have more. Any of the CMAC programs that are in the TIP, Aaron manages.
That's we're supposed to be in fully staffed now, planning.
To go along with that, I guess not directly related to this, but I was finally able to fill my safety manager position. So it's been vacant for 14 months, but Kristen started today. So
Congratulations.
I have one less job to do myself. Woo! So yeah, I'm back up to full staff on my staff, at least right now. So that's yet another big.
So what do you do with your extra time?
Hopefully not be put in more meetings.
Doesn't.
All right, so upcoming scheduled meetings, the policy committee meeting this Thursday at 1:30, and that's down at City Hall. And then paper next month on January 9th.
And just a question, because it had been rescheduled and rescheduled. I think there's an invitation extended to Kabata to come and talk about their socioeconomic analysis or update. Were they the
Will not be doing that at this Thursday's meeting.
Oh, but
They have
January?
not set a date yet.
Okay.
Nope. they
We've
have not said
asked
when
and
they're ready.
followed up, and they haven't said yea or nay.
Yeah, I don't even know if they're ready at this point, but,
That's the report. The report's not ready. So we get a preview of the report, is that the idea?
Well, we just asked them to present. Yeah.
I'm gonna fuck you. I know. You're gonna step over me.
Okay. Well, it's 2:50 p.m. and we are adjourned.